Hey everybody, today I'm really excited because we're going to talk about our new partnership with Front Runner Outfitters and specifically their roof rack systems for your Toyota Tacoma. In this video, we're going to show you how to install the Slimline 2 roof rack from Front Runner Outfitters. This is their flagship roof rack. If you're looking for a go anywhere, mount anything solution for the top of your Tacoma, this is definitely the way to go. And in today's video, we're going to show you step by step how to install this in your own garage. To get the installation of the Front Runner Outfitters roof rack on the top of the Tacoma, I've got Casey here helping me in the shop today. The first step in the process is going to be putting on the two side rails. So we have an assortment of tools here and the parts that we need. You'll need a 10mm socket. You also need the included risers. One thing to note is there are two sizes. The shorter ones we're going to use in the middle, and then the taller ones we're going to use in the front and the back. May need some sort of trim removal tool to pop out the channel molding here. We have a paint pen for marking. Pair of scissors. We're going to cut the molding. There's a couple different ways that we can go about doing that. We'll go over that when we get to that step. And we always recommend using some sort of silicone or RTV to put down where we're going to be screwing the rack onto the roof, so that way we don't have to worry about water or rain getting in after we install our roof rack. You want to get started?
Let's go.
Let's do this. All right, first step in the process is removing the molding here. So we just use our tool and we're just going to go ahead and pull this up. The front is just held in with a little clip there. The back here has a long piece of double-sided tape, which we're just going to peel off. There we go. And then the back there you can see is held in with this little tab. So we're going to go ahead and set this out of the way for right now. Once your molding's removed, you'll see that there's a piece of tape over the existing threaded screw holes. So in the back there's two holes, right in the middle is one hole, and then Casey's got two more up front. You don't have to remove the tape to do this. You can either use your finger or maybe a tool, and all we're going to do is just press down with our finger to find the middle of the screw hole, and you can just use something to push through the tape. You can even use one of the bolts that are provided. Next thing we're going to do is go ahead and start all of the provided bolts in each of the locations. And we can grab our spacers. Again, the two taller ones are going to go in the back. I'm just going to go ahead and drop these over top of the bolt. And then the short one we're going to put in the middle. This is just going to give us a little bit better reference as to where we need to trim the molding. That way you make sure you have enough clearance around the riser, but we don't want it to be too short. So we're going to line our molding up here with the back, and then you can use your paint pen. I'm just going to mark right on either side of the riser. So this is a good option if you are going to just cut the molding like we're going to do today. Secondary option would be to get a actual hole punch kit. For this application you need a 22mm hole punch. You can pick those up on Amazon or a variety of places. That way you can punch a nice clean hole right through the gasket material for the riser. So we'll just finish making our marks. All right. Next up, we're going to trim this. So Casey, you want to grab the scissors? We'll just start on one end. Casey's going to start up by the windshield. We're going to go ahead and make sure that that's good, and then we'll just work our way all the way to the back. Nice sharp pair of scissors really does the trick here. On the bottom side of the molding, there's this flange that actually sits down in the channel. It does have a piece of metal that runs through it. So if you're just going to cut it, nice, like I said, sharp pair of scissors will do the trick. If you're going to do the option of punching the hole, what you're going to want to do is cut the bottom part of the molding here and then use a razor blade to trim off the piece that has the metal strip in it, and then that way you'll be able to just punch right through the rubber without any problem. The front of the molding locks in with a clip that's already part of the bottom of the molding, and the other side of that's already on the truck. All right, now we have all of the pieces trimmed. The little tab on the back here is just going to slide under that molding. And we just want to go ahead and take a second, make sure that our fitment is okay with all of our molding pieces. There's one here in the back we actually need to trim a little bit more off of. All right, perfect. Now we have all of our bolts in place. We have our molding trimmed accordingly. The next step is to grab your RTV or your silicone. We're going to apply this both on top of where the threaded inserts are for the bolts, and then also we're going to put a pretty good sized glob under the ends of the molding. That way when everything dries, your gutter molding here will stay nice and secure. So we'll go ahead and remove the spacers, remove the bolts, and Casey's going to start on that side applying silicone, and we'll just work our way down. You can see there he's putting a nice glob in the middle of where our molding is going to go back in. You can see right here, put it all over where the threaded insert is. Go ahead and step out of his way. So we want to make sure that the silicone gets down in the threaded insert, just so that when it dries that all of the little gaps are completely sealed and then we don't have to worry about water getting in the truck. Go ahead and start putting our little molding back in, give it a nice squish all that silicone around. Gonna hop down, go ahead and grab the roof rail, and then we'll be back. All right, grab the roof rail. So I'm gonna hold this up. Casey's gonna go ahead and replace the rest of the molding strips, and then we can start pushing the risers back into place. Just take your riser, go ahead and give it a good squish into the silicone dollop that we got there. And then we can push our molding down. All right, now we have those in place. We'll set our roof rail up, and you'll see that little flanges will sit right on top of your risers. And we're going to loosely start all of the bolts. The setup for these is the long bolt with the flat washer and or the lock washer. What we found is that sometimes the threads just aren't quite long enough to reach the threaded part with the lock washer on there. So either option's fine. I'm just going to start these with our fingers. Get everything set, and then we'll go back and tighten up here in a minute. Another important note before we tighten these all the way down is figure out a measurement from the front edge of the windshield to the front of your roof rail. Find a reference point on there. That way you can ensure when you put both the rails on that they are equal distance from the windshield, so that way it won't be out of square, or for lack of better terms, the rack won't be racked. Now that we have the front of the rail measured for reference, we can go ahead and tighten down the 5 bolts using a 10mm wrench. As you're tightening these down, just make sure that your wrench doesn't slip and scratch your paint, and also we're just going fairly snug. We don't want to over torque these and risk stripping everything or snapping a bolt. Now that we have the rail mounted on the passenger side of the Tacoma, we're going to go ahead and repeat the steps for the driver's side, and also remember to match up your reference point, and then we'll be ready to build the platform. Now that Casey and I have the roof rails on top of the Tacoma, the next step in our process is going to be unboxing the platform portion of the system here. So we're going to go ahead and get all of the stuff out of the box. We're going to lay it out here on these tables that we have set up. If you don't have tables set up, that's completely fine. Just an adequate floor space will do for this process. Get everything laid out, get our hardware out, and we'll start putting this together. With all of our components laid out here on the table, a couple of quick important notes while you're doing this. We're actually assembling the platform upside down, and then once we move it to the truck, obviously we'll flip it over. So the rails here, you can see there's a channel here, and then you have holes along this side. We're going to face that up. We'll just flip it over here. You'll see that there is already a nylock nut inserted in the slat when you opened it out of the box. The nut is going to go towards the table for assembly. So that way when we put the slat into the channel there, we can use the supplied button head bolt to attach everything with a 5mm Allen key. They've been kind enough to include these, but if you don't want to use one of those, pick up a set of these T-handled ones. These seem to work a lot better, a lot more ergonomic. So we're going to start putting everything together. Then we'll go and attach the wind fairings after we get the rest of the frame assembled. Step one in the process of putting this all together is we're going to start with one of the end slats is going to go in the last hole on your side rail. So from the end, you're going to skip one hole and go to the next one. And you're just going to repeat that all the way down, and then obviously the other end slat will go in the last hole on the other side of the rail. Our recommendation is, if you are doing this by yourself, is to start on one corner, work your way down one side of one of the side rails, then move to the other side. That way everything's lined up and everything will go together nicely. Casey's here helping me today, so we're going to go ahead and just knock out both sides, and then we'll show you the corners here in a minute. So as you guys just saw when Casey and I were putting this together, all of the bolts here on the sides, we just started with our fingers. We're not going to crank anything down initially until we get all the pieces in place. Now, after we have the main platform put together, now we'll go ahead and use the Allen key and tighten everything up to make sure everything's adjusted and fits just right. Now that we have all of the slats and the side rails all combined, everything's tightened down, we're going to go ahead and install the wind fairings. Those need to go on the bottom before you put this platform onto the top of your truck. So you do have a left and a right. You can do one of two things here. You can either put them on the first rail or the second rail, depending on your preference, and also it depends on whether your truck is equipped with a sunroof. Casey's has the sunroof, so we want to make sure that we put the wind fairings on there not to impede the operation of that. So there's a provided hardware bag that comes with those wind fairing bits, just a couple of, again, button head bolts and some washers here. So we'll go ahead and get these installed, and then the next step after that is we're going to flip it and put the corner pieces on. You're going to need a 5mm hex key, the same one that you use for the side rails. So you can see what Casey did here is he took the button head bolt here, put the little washer on it, and then you have the nut there. So if you look here on the rail, this is where we're going to mount it. You can see there is a little cutout there. We can drop the nut in there, then we can slide it to where we need it. Place our bolt in place, and again we're just going to get it finger tight. Now that it's locked onto there, then we can make adjustments and get these centered before we lock everything down. If you're really OCD like we are, go ahead and grab your tape measure and find the exact center of your roof rack. So inside to inside, we are at 48 inches, 2 feet. Slide. Next step in our assembly process is putting on the corner caps. So to do this, Casey and I are going to flip the entire platform over, and then you'll see where the nut certs are for the other bolts that hold in the corner caps.
Here we have our nut certs. These go in one way, front runner facing up, slides right on.
These bolts are going to be using a 4mm hex key. It's also provided with your kit. with our platform assembled, to get this ready to go on top of the truck, we need to install these 4 bolts on each side that will mount up with the rails that we put on. So to do this, you're just going to take the bolt and slide it in the little hole here, and we're going to just place it towards the outside. One important note, if you already put your wind fairing on either the second or the first slat here, make sure that you put the bolt in first. So we're going to actually have to loosen this up, place the bolt in there, and then we'll tighten the wind fairing back down. So all we need to do here is just slide over the nut for the wind fairing, put our bolt in, and then we can put the nut back in there and slide it back over. Just note, you only need to loosen one side, that way you don't lose your center point on your wind fairing. So now that we have that in place, Casey did the same thing on the other side. The last 2 bolts for each side are going to go on the last 2 slats opposite of the front of your rack. We're going to grab the rest of the washers and the nylock nuts. Should still have 4 for each side. So we'll stick these in our pocket, and then Casey and I are going to lift the platform up and set it on the rails. Now's the time that we've all been waiting for. We're going to get the platform onto the rails, get this bolted down with the 4 bolts on each side, and we will be done. So Casey and I have got the rack just rested up here on top of his tent, and we're just going to slide it into place, line up your bolt holes, and then we're going to secure it. So now that we have each of the 4 bolts lined up with the rails, we want to go ahead and grab the tape measure again. Just make sure that it is equal left to right and any front to back adjustment so that everything looks nice and pretty. So let's grab the tape measure. I'll measure over here and then we can make adjustments. All right, so from the rail to the outside of the platform, I'm at like 2 1/8. 2 1/8. So while Casey's checking the back, I'm going to go ahead and grab one of our flat washers and one of our nylock nuts and start it on this front corner. Casey's measuring the back, making some small adjustments. I'll just go ahead and keep starting these while he's doing that. So when we get it where we want it, we can go ahead and lock it down. Now that we have all of the nylock nuts in place, we're going to grab a 13mm wrench and tighten everything down. All right, platform is attached to the side rails. Last little bit of housekeeping before we finish this part of the project up is grab your little black hex caps. The larger one's going to go over the 8 bolts that we just attached the platform to the base, and then we have smaller ones for the bolts that went into the roof of the truck. So we'll just go ahead and pop these on. One of the great things about this roof rack system is you still have plenty of clearance over the shark fin antenna on the back of your truck, so no worries about that. And like I said earlier, when we put on the wind fairing, if you put it either on the second or the first slat, you still have lots of clearance and operation for your sunroof if your truck is equipped with one. One more pro tip for you: after you get your platform on and everything is set and locked into place, we need to also take into account that we just raised the vertical height of your entire vehicle. So we're going to take a measurement just so that we can have peace of mind and know whether we can fit in parking garages or drive-throughs or any other sort of low clearance. So I'm going to hold a level up here on top of the roof rack, which is our highest point. Casey's going to take a tape measure from the ground, and we're going to figure out what our new vertical clearance is.
Got 74 inches.
All right, so Now when Casey's driving around, he can know that anything shorter than 74 inches is going to be a problem. All right, thanks for hanging out with Casey and I today in the shop while we installed this Front Runner Outfitters Slimline 2 roof rack. This is available for the 2005 and up Toyota Tacoma. There's also an option for the 4Runner that we will be going over later. And the other great thing about all of these Front Runner Outfitter racks is the amount of things and different combinations that you can load onto the top, whether it be storage boxes or traction boards or shovels or whatever you need, cans, water, whatever it is. This system is definitely the way to go for doing all of that. So if you want to pick up this rack or any of those other products, go ahead and head over to the shop at www.trailgridpro.com. Like always, have a blast out there.